I am here with Minister of Agriculture, Saboto Caesar. This afternoon, he's kind enough to talk to us about some of the challenges that the agriculture sector is facing in the wake of the volcanic eruption of the Soufriere volcano. Minister Caesar, from what we have seen, there has been the impact on the northern windward side in terms of a major part of the agricultural belt. It's almost decimated. What are your thoughts in terms of the impact that it is going to have on the actual agricultural sector in terms of domestic consumption, in terms of actual exports? How far are we set back?
Okay, so it's very important for persons who are listening to appreciate that geographically we have zoned the country into different areas. So there is the red zone that we are actually in because it's the closest area to the volcano. And that was done because there was an expectation that the closer you are to the volcano, the greater the damage and loss would be. In the red zone, we can safely say that we have lost almost 100% of the agricultural production that we had in the area. This area, primarily on the windward side, the red zone, we had a significant proportion of our arrowroot cultivation. Over 90% of the arrowroot produced in the country was cultivated in this area. We also produced a lot of coconuts for bottling and also for the making of coconut oil and for the export of nuts. There were also several investments in this area in fisheries and a major area for livestock production. We have already noticed that livestock farmers, the animals that we were able to move out were safe. The animals that have been left back, we are now bringing water and feed to them, but they are getting a bit weak. And St Vincent and the Grenadines, we are an exporter of cattle, pigs, sheep and goats. We actually have an excellent export trade to Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we noticed last week that we were still able to export to Barbados because we had the eruption on Friday, and on Monday we did an export to Barbados. It was, however, about 10% of what it is usually. And if you notice, there are trucks going out of these areas and they are loaded with plantains and other root crops. And I have been advised by the private sector exporters that they will be exporting to Trinidad and Tobago on Monday. What we have done is that we have set up a framework whereby the state will be purchasing $500,000 worth of goods in the first instance from farmers, because we want to ensure at the end of the day that our national food security is taken care of. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are basically the breadbasket of the Southern Caribbean. So some persons might ask, why are you still exporting? Well, the volumes that we were producing certain commodities in, we will not be able to consume all of that locally. So for example, we are a major producer in the Caribbean of dasheen and sweet potato. We export boatloads of this. So I want persons to be aware that whilst there may be a significant reduction in the variety, that some commodities will still go because we have significant production of those, particularly in the green and the orange and yellow zones.
Okay. Now, Minister, you would have made significant strides in terms of research and development. You had the tissue culture at Orange Hill. Were you able to salvage most of that research facilities and equipment?
So phase one that started about 3-4 months ago, we were moving assets from the government located in the red zone, and we were assisting persons in the private sector to move their assets. Now, we were able to move a large percentage of our assets from the tissue culture lab. We have a tissue culture lab in Orange Hill that basically can produce planting material for the entire Southern Caribbean. And that's one of our main strengths in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we give excellent planted material to our farmers and it increases production and productivity. If you notice when you were coming up, all the greenhouses have been destroyed, but the equipment needed for the tissue culture production, we were able to move them out. So we were able to salvage those. And our technicians are working overtime to make sure that everything is up and running so that we can start back production as early as next week.
Now, after Jamaica, St. Vincent was one of the islands that would have made some significant strides in terms of getting a foothold, a foot into the burgeoning marijuana industry sector. Now, you guys have gotten to the point of licensing. You have developed actually greenhouses right here in the Northern Windward section. How far has this set back this ambition? Do you still see it as possible, or do you think you're going to lose, all the strides that you have made?
Well, this industry, it has to be looked at this point in time from the standpoint that it was the crafting and the creativity of the private sector and the public sector that brought it together. The government created the enabling environment, but the investments primarily were done by the private sector. So there were investors from around the world who came to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, built the greenhouses, built the shade houses, brought in the germplasm needed, the seeds, their technicians, and we were able to basically develop that industry. And over the last 3 years, we have issued millions of dollars in terms of licenses. We have trained persons. We have been able to, in the region, be a shining light as it pertains to the medicinal cannabis industry. We are having a meeting next week with all the investors in the industry because we want them to be aware that we can relocate to different areas in the country and do this quite quickly, and we will be able to get the industry up and running again. In the red zone, however, we were able to advise the investors quite early, and most of them would have removed their shade houses or protect them, to say the least, and they will be able to reconstruct these in different areas. Of course, finding the land is going to be an issue, but the government is going to work in every way to support that. What I want to mention, however, is that there was a large percentage of traditional cannabis cultivators who had not come mainstream as yet, meaning they were not licensed as traditional cultivators pursuant to the Medicinal Cannabis Industry Act. So they were basically continuing with the illicit industry. And these persons were cultivating on the slopes of La Soufriere. And these persons, of course, had to evacuate. And what I want to note is that we are going to try to work with them to create alternative sustainable livelihoods for them. And persons who are traditional cultivators who did not come forward when we offer the licenses for the traditional cultivators, they can come forward now, and the Medicinal Cannabis Authority will welcome them. We will fast track a process for them. But I just want them to be aware that with all that is happening, that alternative sustainable livelihoods, whether it's in fishing or other commodities, that is open to them, and we are willing and ready to help them in that regard.
Now, farming has been pretty much a major source of employment for many youngsters. I mean, back in the 90s, during the green gold days of the banana industry, many persons just stepped out of school, right into the banana fields, and that way counted as employed. As a matter of fact, remember the days you could have actually gone to the bank and gotten a loan based on your production. In terms of those persons who are now displaced as farmers and unemployed, what plans do you have for them? Let's say they can't even find enough land space within the green zone. I'm not sure what you're going to do in that area, but what plans do you have for them for those displaced persons in terms of employment in the short to medium term?
So first of all, I want to explain the trajectory that the agriculture sector has been on since the 1950s. We basically, from 1950s to 1992, we had the banana industry as the mainstay. Somewhat monocrop type operation, and you had root crops very small, and you had sugarcane at one point in time, and then that went out in the 80s. Now, we have established over the last 10 years a very diverse production platform where there are several other types of commodities. So it's not only bananas and plantains, but the root crop subsector, apiculture. We do a lot, for example, with the medicinal cannabis. And we have invested significantly in livestock production. Now, we have already identified and will continue to identify areas in the safe zone for the relocation. Of course, these lands are in private hands, and there will be discussions, of course, and that has already started between the persons in the private sector, because at the end of the day, as I noted, the state is there to create the enabling environment. There is a land bank that we have been working on and we have created over the years. So it's opportune time now for us to maximize the usage of the data and the information that we have touching on concerning the land bank to provide areas available for persons to cultivate and to farm and to diversify their production.
All right, Minister, thank you very much for joining me, and do stay safe, sir.